Konnichiwa minasan, I'm Matayu and this is Manga You May Have Missed, though today we are not covering a manga. It's time once more to head a bit further west and take a look at a Korean manhwa, my personal favorite of the small number I've read, in fact. This is Rebirth. Rebirth is a currently ongoing manhwa written and illustrated by Lee Kang-woo under the pen name of Woo. It was serialized by Daiwan CI and Comics Champ in 1998 and has since produced 26 volumes with more to come. Rebirth was serialized in North America by Tokyopop, in Australia and New Zealand by Mammon Entertainment, in Sweden by Wahlströms, and in Italy by Flashbook. I suppose I ought to inform you, dear viewer, that Rebirth is a vampire manhwa. It differs from most vampire stories in the fact that our vampire is a 28-year-old manly man as opposed to a twig of a teen vampire. This was done intentionally. Wu is quoted as saying he is sick of the 13 to 17-year-old other pretty boys that seem to populate every other manhwa title out there right now. As such, Rebirth's protagonist is very much an adult, thank you. Rebirth has a Chapter 0. I'm looking through it as well as the first and second chapters because there are important narrative points that are set up in the 0th chapter. Plus, chapters 0 and 1 combined are less than 40 pages. I'd like to take the opportunity to remind you that manhwa read from left to right. The nameless Chapter 0 begins in darkness with counting. The counting voice remarks on how boring the darkness is getting. It's having trouble keeping up with its count, which is in the billions. Suddenly, a light. The voice remembers the light. A ray that will enlighten the world. And it hates the light. Lightning strikes a tree. It's winter in 1641. We're somewhere near the Romanian border. Next to the burning tree stands a man and a woman. The man has fangs. A voice names him Desat, asks if he's tired, and claims he's a disappointment. He then asks the man to join him. Desat calls him Cal and insane. The woman steps forward to give Cal's full name as Kaludica. She exposits that she, Kaludica, and Desat are supposed to be friends. Kaludica ponders this for a second, but Desat yells for the woman, Lilith, to move, as Kaludica does something with his hand. Shot through the heart, and Kaludica's to blame. I feel like I've used that before. Desat can't quite process what just happened. Kaludica claims that what happened was unfortunate, but Lilith wasted his time. He also says that Desat doesn't have to worry about his condition, whatever that means. Desat rushes to Lilith's side. It must have been something she said, because she just died in his arms that night.
Dear God, stop!
I hadn't used that one, though.
Doesn't matter, stop!
Fine. Kaludica taunts Desat, telling him to lick up her blood before it goes bad. Drinking the blood of their loved ones is what vampires do, right? Desat voices his opinion on the proceedings. He swears to kill Kaludica and starts chanting an incantation. Kaludica, still condescending, tells Desat not to overwork himself, as a vampire's magic has no hope of harming him. Desat fires off a Kamehameha, urging Cal to die. Forgive the guy his lack of originality, his lover was just murdered. The energy blast swords towards Kaludica and the people standing with him. They comment on the form, Kaludica noting that Desat is much more than a simple vampire. Sadly, he doesn't know when he's outmatched. Kaludica stops Desat's assault with a single finger, then appears behind him. No matter what Desat does, it doesn't change the fact that he is a creature of darkness, and darkness can never defeat light. Remember that. There's a burst of energy, and so Desat, our counter from earlier, began his existence in the endless darkness. The first real chapter carries the title Rebirth. It's still winter, but the year is now 1998, and we are deep in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania. A car drives along a road. There's a castle in the distance. The car pulls to a stop in the hometown of the vampire legend. The car's driver notes that the town seems abandoned and that there's a gloomy, thick atmosphere. Times like these, he says, make his spiritual research all worthwhile. His daughter is less enthused, or at least a lot more sarcastic. The man claims it's different this time, naming the daughter Remy. She agrees that the view is nicer than usual, especially when compared to the cemetery they visited earlier. Her dad is less than impressed with her false enthusiasm, shoving a newspaper in her face. Apparently there have been 25 murders in the area since October. So you brought your teenage daughter with you because... Remy hopes that they didn't come to this town simply because of a tabloid, when she is suddenly groped from behind. The molester says that Professor Doe's daughter is adorable, and Remy responds to the assault in the proper fashion. Her father asks her what she thinks she's doing to the distinguished spiritual researcher, Dr. Chris Redfield. Yes, named after that Chris Redfield. Remy asks if her dad's saying it's fine for him to grab her inappropriately if he's a distinguished professor. How is she supposed to respect him if he keeps hanging out with old perverts? At that moment, Remy is asked to step aside. Why? To make room for the International Spiritual Phenomenon Research Team, of course. Her father motions for her to follow them. Remy bemoans wasting her winter vacation on this trip, comparing it to taking a field trip with kindergartners. That said, the atmosphere around the town feels really strange. Strange enough that it really feels like a vampire might be living there. While Remy is musing, Sari is fighting amongst themselves. Remy wonders why the village is deserted, and Professor Doe cites the newspaper article. There's something evil in the area that frightened the people out of their homes. Remy dismisses it as some psycho or a wild animal. Professor Doe asks if some psycho or wild animal could blow a man to bits without leaving behind any residue of gunpowder. Remy cannot answer. Her father says that this time they're going to see something a bit more impressive than ghostly little spirits in a cemetery. If it's so dangerous, Remy asks, won't they all be in danger? Professor Doe realizes that someone is missing. He has hired an exorcist to assist them, and she's late. Remy is skeptical. This is the 20th century, after all. But her father's attention is diverted from being irritated at her. Not that he could take her in a fight anyway. It seems that Sari has detected a steadily increasing energy. Professor Doe remarks that there's something a little strange about all this. The device is picking up 5 or 6 energy signatures, one of which is unusually strong. Furthermore, if the device is correct, and the energy is coming from directly where they're standing, but there's nothing there. Remy chimes in with the obvious answer. The highest energy signature is the leader, and the reason Sari can't see them is because they're either directly above them or directly below them. Unfortunately for them, she's exactly right. Monsters burst out of the ground. According to the helpful author's note, they're called lachnas. In short, dumb but eat human flesh. Read the rest at your leisure. Upon spotting the monsters, Sari elects to take the Monty Python route and advance away from the enemy. Unfortunately, Chris Redfield isn't so lucky. I'd make a Resident Evil joke, but I hadn't played them. The monster guts him. Professor Doe calls for him, but a bald guy with a gun says it's too late for him. He fires at the monster. Bullets make it angry. Professor Doe is also grabbed by a monster. He tells Remy to run, but she grabs the gun instead, apparently not getting the memo that the bullets do nothing. She says she'd never leave without her father, pumping more useless bullets into the monster. Or in the monster's general direction, at least. She has a certain problem with aiming. Suddenly, a monster pops out of the ground behind her, and we cut away from the screen. Meanwhile, some distance away, a woman is having car trouble. She yells at it, then begs forgiveness from the big man upstairs for using vulgar words. Again. If it's not obvious, this is the missing exorcist. She's too far away to walk, but decides she must anyway to keep her promise. It's a monk's sworn duty. Gender requirements for positions in the Christian church aside. A bottle of holy water falls from her pocket. It starts turning red, indicating an evil spirit nearby. This could only mean that Sari are in danger. That's the end of the chapter, but in the interest of not leaving you on a cliffhanger, dear viewer, we continue. Chapter 2 is called Escape. The exorcist can now sense an unordinary evil coming from the forest. She failed to notice it earlier because she was preoccupied with the car. If anything happens to Sari, it's her fault, but with God's help she's not going to let that happen. She arrives in the town square, out of breath. It's deserted. She calls for the professors, but gets no response. She wonders if she's too late, but then is called to by a bleeding professor, Kennedy. He calls her millionaire, and apparently being late is a usual thing with her. She's glad to see he's okay, which he isn't, and asks about the other members of Sari. Kennedy slumps to the ground and explains that the others are in the building. He doesn't know how many are left alive. He tells her to leave him to die and to save the others. Millionaire tells him not to talk like that, considering he doesn't look that badly hurt, but then he transforms into an eldritch horror and explodes. Millionaire stands there in shock, not quite sure what just happened to Professor Leon Kennedy. Oh, god damn it. As she turns away, a monster bursts out of the ground. It lunges at her, arm raised to attack, letting out a threatening, quack. She notices in time and escapes with damage only to her habit. She's tossed against the door, and I feel the need to remind the viewer that this is seinen-equivalent because that's going to become pretty obvious in short order. As the remains of her modesty fall away, Millionaire vows to destroy the monster. Somehow I doubt this is considered appropriate wear for a member of the church. She vows to give the monster 100 deaths to appease the souls of the fallen, and generates an energy field around the scepter, a saint's aura if you will. The monster is blown back through the wall, revealing Professor Doe and Remy still in the monster's clutches, but not dead yet. Professor Doe calls to Millionaire, who gives us his full name and is happy to see him alive. She begins to apologize for arriving so late, but Sang-Ho Do cuts her off, begging her to save Remy, who has fainted. Millionaire swears to save them both, but she's not sure if she can actually pull it off, considering the sheer number of monsters. Sang-Ho theorizes that the monsters have been starving since the villagers left, which is why there's so many. He looks at his daughter. There must be a way out of this, he thinks. As he's thinking, Millionaire is dodging monster arms. She fires more Saints R's, but can't take out monsters with a single hit. The monsters are doing considerably better. Millionaire makes a wonderful punching bag. 3 monsters approach her, but she is able to dodge. She taunts them and gets hit again for her trouble. She is in trouble, and knows it, but she has to keep fighting or innocence will die. True shonen spirits. But this is seinen. There's a limit to what a body can take. She collapses, surrounded. Sang-Ho is still trying to figure out a plan when he remembers Remy's comments about the energy readings. He calls for Millionaire's attention and explains that one of the monsters is stronger than the others. If he's the leader, Millionaire may be able to throw the others off balance by killing him. As Millionaire feels for the strongest source of energy, a person imprisoned in darkness begins to feel light. And he hates the light. Millionaire identifies the strongest monster. She funnels all her remaining strength into a holy blast. The monster is blinded by the light.
You promised to stop that!
How am I supposed to keep a promise to you if I forget you exist every time I stop talking to you?
Touché.
The monster explodes as Remy regains consciousness. None of the other monsters seem to care. A red powder covers the ground, but there's no other effect. Sang-ho and Millennier begin to lose hope. Remy asks what's going on as the voice in the darkness notes that his world is becoming brighter. Sang-ho explains that the monsters suck bodily fluids out of humans and then explode the body. He tells Remy to protect all the orifices on your body. The voice reaffirms its hatred of light as Remy realizes exactly what every orifice entails. Millenier's protective aura wears off, and she is captured too. She apologizes to Sang-ho as Remy starts defending her orifices. Tentacles surround our trio as Sang-ho resigns himself to the end. Remy, still struggling, is punched in the face by one of the monsters, drawing blood. She calls for her father as the voice wonders how long it's been. Sang-ho claims it's all his fault as the voice wonders how far it counted. 7,962,624,227? Not sure what he was counting, but whatever it wasn't seconds. Millennier apologizes as the voice once again wonders how long it's been. And what happened to Lilith? Oh wait, she's already dead. Remy's blood drips into the dust, setting off a chain reaction. It creates a whirlwind of dust and energy. The other monsters are blinded by an explosion. Within the explosion, something starts to coalesce. Millennier realizes that the monster she destroyed was a seal for this dark energy. The shape inside the explosion begins to take on a humanoid appearance. Sang-ho notes that Remy's blood caused the reaction. As the humanoid form finishes, both Sang-ho and Millennier realize that there's only one evil creature that reacts to human blood. And that's a vampire. After 350 years, Desat El Rudbik is back, and he is pissed. The end. I know I still left you on a cliffhanger, and I'm sorry, but the second chapter is as far as I go. Read it yourself if you must know what happens. One of the things that struck me when I read Rebirth is the similarities in plot structure to Berserk. Not in terms of actually stealing ideas from Berserk, but it's a very similar story played out in different ways. Rebirth is also a lot less gory and depressing than Berserk, so it has that going for it. I believe that Desat can stand tall and proud among the ranks of real fuck-mothering vampires, and I hope you'll evaluate that claim for yourselves.
Show you another way, so put your glasses on. Nothing will be wrong. There's no break, there's no fake. It's up to you. The fast one should be finding.